Hey everybody, welcome to Comix Rant episode 12, and welcome to my amazing studio. I'm in my garage and it's kind of crazy in here, so I kind of had to block up the background with stuff. But anyway, we're going to get into our show, and it'll be fun. It seems like my past few episodes, I've been reading through some manga that I've enjoyed. And they're not your typical mainstream manga. Well, you'll see. Anyway, let's get into the show. And for this episode, I'm talking about Uzumaki by Junji Ito. And I have no idea if I said any of those words correctly. But we're going to talk about this book. Uzumaki, from what I understand, means spiral. And it's like that coily thing that you see in anything, as because of what this book is talking about. But I related that word to the shape that's on imitation crab meat when you eat ramen. But this book is a horror genre story, and I am a giant scaredy cat. So I actually have known about this book for a long time, but I have just kept off reading it. I don't know why. I just kind of feel like I'm not ready for any of this stuff, and I'm just scared. The ironic thing is, one of the stories I really have wanted to tell is a horror story, or at least it has supernatural themes in it. So I have been reading a bunch of horror books from what I used to read way back when with the DC horror comics, and just anything I can get my hands on, especially in comics. I think in comics I can handle it a little better, maybe because I'm approaching it like to try to see how I can approach my own book. And this is a great example. I don't read a lot of manga. Most times I feel like I've a lot of the mainstream pop culture ones, I feel like I've aged out of. And I'm not saying that to poo-poo on these books. They're great, right? Like the pop culture ones, Naruto, Dragon Ball, all that stuff, right? They've got great formula and all that kind of stuff. I've just read a lot of those, so now I think my tastes have kind of switched, and I'm looking for something new, different, especially from that part of the globe, from Japanese manga. And this is one of them. Yes. Yes. It's freaky stuff. But Ito is a great draftsman. Great technique. If the division of labor in manga is that he draws the characters, then the main guy draws characters, and then his assistants will draw backgrounds or hatch things and all that kind of stuff. His characters are awesome. They look so good, and just from the first few pages when I flipped through it, I was like, all right, you got me. Like, this is not your typical big-eyed manga look. This is like its own thing. And it's got like, I feel like it kind of channels a lot of the old comics that I used to read. And as I flip through these and I look at, this is awesome too, by the way. Let me just stop and shut up so you can take a look at it. The composition, that, it's just this schoolgirl walking through a field with spiral leaves, and he sets it up. It's great. It's like somebody telling me a story in a creepy campfire. His storytelling is spot on, awesome. The format of the book is a bunch of short a bunch of self-contained stories within chapters, and it's like I can kind of think of it like Twilight Zone, really. But it has one theme, which is the spiral, and it's wild because as I'm reading it, I'm like 2 chapters in, I'm like, how is he gonna have this much amount of story about how creepy a spiral is? And you know what? He does it, and it's awesome. So I when I looked at his characters, I get this vibe of like I don't know what it is, but it's the style of the way that he draws the line work. But it reminds me of like some European comics. It's not, right? It gives me like this Manera feel. I don't know what it is. Maybe like the thinness of her, the lines on her hair, the proportions of her face. And, this is crazy because he's just so good with these characters, and he maintains it all the way to the end. And it's great. Or him and his team maintain it all the way to the end, and it's fantastic. It's really good. So you may have noticed. So one of the first spirals that you see is a snail and a twister, right? So already from the beginning, this is like page 8. You're already like, there's something weird with this little town with spirals. And, if you come in here not knowing anything about it, you're like, why are spirals scary? Oh, and then he'll explain it to you. Don't you worry. But it's these 2 characters. It follows mainly this girl, and sometimes her boyfriend, Suichi, makes appearances in there. And one of the first stories actually involves her boyfriend's family. And it's about this potter. Wait, is it about this potter? Yes, I think it is about this potter. Well, his father is a potter, so naturally spirals happen. This is beautiful though, so even though it's like this horror story that I'm scared to read, the artwork is just so gorgeous. Even when it gets like crazy gory, or is gory the word I'm looking for? Crazy grotesque. Yes. This book is like body horror grotesque. So, this is not even 30 pages in. It's like creepy eyeballs rotating in separate directions. Yeah, something about it reminds about Manera. I don't know why. So I'm just going to show you some of these. I don't want to spoil them all because I think part of the fun, the creepy fun is what the next crazy looking spiral related thing is. And some of my favorite stories are kind of not full on grotesque. This is cool. This is and he'll employ like a different texture to add to the creepy factor. So there's like smoke coming out of a building, and it's spiraling. The clouds are in a spiral. There's faces in there. There's like tongues coming out, like the initial character that we flipped through earlier. Spirals in the sky, and it's going nuts. People going crazy. Like spirals and spirals. And this is one of my favorite stories. I think because it kind of will deal with, while it's horror and like somewhat sci-fi, I guess. No, what am I saying? It's horror. It's horror. But it'll deal with like topics like mean girls in school, the popular kid, and all that kind of stuff. And it executes it really, really well. And, we still follow this girl throughout the stories and all these different ways that the spiral has been affecting the townspeople. And this was one of my favorites. And it was about like this girl trying to basically steal our main character's boyfriend. Like that kind of stuff. And I like that it's still horror, but it's like in the it deals with people like kids still going to school. Here's the other one that's my favorite. Oops, I almost spoiled that crazy body horror for you. One of my favorite ones again is that style story. There's a lot of different styles in here, but it was Medusa, and it was also about popularity contest. I think in this case, yeah, it's popularity contest. But it was cool. Like, you know, like I was saying, like how many things could he come up with that would be scary that has a spiral on it? And this one's like a curl on her hair, right? And I love it. It's just kind of, it still is a horror story, but kind of has like this weird whimsy to it, right? Like, what's so bad about having cool curly hair? Well, you'll see what's so bad about having cool curly hair later. Here's another one I marked off just with the drawing. Like, you know, I borrowed this from the library. But this is, again, another one of those books that I borrowed, but will definitely have to buy. And it's already on my Amazon shopping list. Or, you know, I'll probably find it somewhere else. Like discount comic books. Or in stock trades. Those guys have like some cheap stuff. Anyway, like, you know, like the spiral is something scary. Basically, the whole book is building up to it. And, you know, as you're reading this, it is creepy. But when I take a look back, right, like this is pretty. I'm, you know, maybe I'm mesmerized by the spiral. Just really good looking stuff, man. Like, you know, every page that I'm flipping through, woo, and scary stuff as well, right? As like, you know, the beauty of the whole setup of this 2 pages, and now you got dead charred bodies. All right. It's great. It's just really good. I was just always astounded as I flipped through the book and read it. I couldn't stop. I just had to keep reading it. And then there's other stories in here where he'll depict, like, you know, this is scary to me. Like, it's a scary face. Right? Line work is great. You know, and it's consistent. You know, there's all these scary faces going on. It's consistent. Every panel is lovingly drawn. And just even like, you know, a face with a bloody mouth is scary. Eyeballs, scary. Right? Like, there's more where he just totally goes to town and depicts every detail of what scary can be. But I think I love it that he can also flip it around and still be kind of subtle about it in a way, right? It's kind of subtle about it. Umbilical cord, it's a spiral. It can be creepy. And here's another. There's tons of these pages throughout this book, and I cannot recommend this book any higher, other than like if you're scared of things like me. But you know, I just enjoyed it so much because of the quality of storytelling, the style. It was just so different from what I'm used to. Yeah, oh my gosh, that is not right. But it's just so well done. I will not get into the last half of this book because what's interesting is, as I said before, all these chapters are kind of self-contained horror stories, almost like a TV show. But by the end, he does kind of bring them back and put them together. You know, it's not like he's gonna explain it completely to you, but you're not really left hanging. Like, because the stories are so good in themselves, even though the spiral is like this mysterious thing that you might never even understand what it's about. It's just there to kind of get the horror going within these themes, and they're all great. They're all really great stories, and the main character is awesome. Like, every time I'm reading about her and what's going on, I'm like, how is this girl still alive in this town? But you know, he manages to do it, and I don't know how fast he pumped this out, or not pumped it out, just how consistent he was with his schedule. But this collection is amazing. It's just amazing, and this binding is really cool too, by the way. Like that inverted line with the one color, it's cool. Whoever came up with the graphic design on it with when it got reprinted. But anyway, let me wrap it up there. I like the book so much, I just don't want to show you like so much of it. I mean, I can flip through it. Oh, and they'll do this thing where in manga they color some of the pages, and I think he does it again here. I forget what the schedule is. I remember I learned about it before that. Here it is. That when it's the lead for those anthology books like Jump or wherever this was printed initially, they will, like, the lead book will have like a couple pages in color just to show you, like, hey, this is special. And it's restrained, it's pulled back, and I don't think I want any more than that. I do love reading it in black and white. It's just really good. Anyway, I was supposed to wrap up the segment, but but please check it out. It is it leans into body horror a lot. It's grotesque, but it's just so well done. I was surprised at the class that he pulls off with this book. I will definitely check out his other books. I'll probably freak myself out, but it's just, if it's this kind of quality, I'm all in for any more Junji Ito stories. Anyway, I hope that was a good look into this book for you guys. I hope it helps inspire you guys to do your own stuff and draw, because now I'm switching over to drawing mode. I'll see you guys in a bit. And here I'm starting the sketch phase, kind of thumbnailing some of this stuff for page 20 of my Heroes versus Robot comic book. So this is still part of Inktober, and for this year, what I did was I decided to draw just a panel a day. So this is the first panel, and the idea with this page is that the character is falling, and as he's falling, he's also growing, like getting larger. And in the beginning, you saw like how my panels were all squares, which is fine. And here's a close-up of the finished one from panel 1. So that was in one day. I did that for one day, and then now it's another day for Inktober again. Anyway, they all started out as squares, the paneling, and then it just wasn't as fun or as dynamic as I wanted it to be, as exciting. And I switched it up to these circles, and I got this idea from Jesse Lonergan. I think I did a spotlight on one of his books, but he did this sequence where someone was growing in his comic. He laid it out a little different from mine, but it was circles, and I like the idea of that, the circles having this different kind of look in terms of paneling, and might help like sell that this thing is growing. And here's a shot of that the first and the second panel finished, and now this is the third one. The idea I had was that he would grow in size, like he would be like a giant, like Apache Chief, who I loved as a kid in Super Friends. But I wanted it so that he didn't grow uniformly. So like, he'd be like bubbling and kind of gross and interesting at the same time, because he's like this metal robot, Roman centurion looking kind of guy. And so it was fun because I could just kind of do these little bumps and hatch it. And here's the pencil stage. As I'm working through Inktober, I try to take pictures of stages. And here's the tighter pencils, so you can kind of see it. And then I also took a picture of the final inks. And I liked how these guys turned out. This was the last 3 days of Inktober. I never really got to finish the full page until later on. But not to worry, I also have that in this video clip, so we can see how the whole page came along. So I actually got to draw what I wanted to ink in pencil format And here's some reference photo of me. Don't mind the face. That doesn't have to be referenced. But the fist was what I was going for. Sometimes I get stuck and I have to take a picture to wrap my head around it and how these things would work. Here's some more tighter pencils. And you can see like the radial lines in the back. And I took a shot, literally, of alcohol, whiskey, at the end of that Inktober year. And then this now is time lapse of me continuing it after Inktober. I'm trying to remember how long after Inktober did I do this. I drew a bunch of other things in between, so it probably was like 4 months after. I just kind of, after Inktober, I just kind of stop. It's bad. I always try to pump myself up after Inktober and pretend I'm just going to keep that pace up, but actually I just go to a complete stop. It's kind of unfortunate. So I need to figure out how to keep that going. I'll usually stop inking traditionally after Inktober, and then I'll just go to like digital inks. I still prefer inking traditionally. I like the way my stuff looks when I do it traditionally, but digital inking is just... So I'll probably have a few episodes after this that show more of my work in the Bomb Squad. But there's a bunch of fan stuff that I did after this Inktober that was I'm gonna have to put together in a future episode, and it'll be fun. It'll be about Zack Snyder's Justice League, which I am a giant fan of, and I'm sorry if you are not, but I'm not trying to offend you. But that's for another episode. For this episode, let's go back to talking about some of this inking stuff that I'm doing. So I'll usually start inking the outside and then filling in the inside as I try to work it out. Sometimes when I fill in the thing, I think I've said this before, I'll start drawing lines that I didn't mean, that make a shape that I didn't mean to make. And sometimes those are nice looking. Sometimes I won't fill in a complete black silhouette, and some of that stuff just kind of happens, and that's part of the fun. Kind of the random shapes that come out that I just kind of like. I don't have full control over some of this stuff. Maybe that's not something most artists will say, but I don't. Stuff comes out and I like it or I hate it, and I try to work from there. Like it just kind of has a mind of its own sometimes, and I like it. Where I guess some people can have an idea of what they want to draw, and that's what they are disappointed because it doesn't come out that way. Sometimes for me, something else better happens while I'm drawing that I didn't plan for. So I'm rotating the page as I'm inking here, so it's like an easier stroke for my wrist or my fingers to kind of pull. And the way that I ink my taper, I have an easier time making the taper at the beginning than the end. I'm kind of heavy-handed, so when I start a line, I can be pretty precise and control how thin it is in the beginning. But then because I'm leaning to make this line fatter, it's hard for me mentally to ease up on the pressure, so it tapers at the end as well. I'm actually not sure if this is normal or if it's just because I don't know how to use the brush just yet. I don't have full brush control just yet. I know I see other artists are able to do it, and it looks great. But then nowadays I also get into artists that kind of lay it down lay that brush stroke down super heavy. And some of the masters are like that, right? The old school guys like Toth and why am I blanking out here? I just drew one of his covers, and I have a copy of it right now as I'm talking through this. Oh, Frank Robbins. How did I forget Frank Robbins? Brain fart. Where they can kind of let the brush stroke just have so much weight, but they control it so well that it lands exactly where they want it to be. So maybe if you just stare at this brush stroke, it looks like a blob of ink, but when you look at the whole thing, it looks great. Paul Pope does this too. It's kind of like this quote unquote messier line. John Paul Leon kind of does this too. He just passed away recently, which is very sad. He was one of my favorite artists as well. Maybe I'll see if I can devote an episode to his stuff. It's like a lot more brushier, which is funny to say because when you're inking with a brush, that's usually what it should look like. Brushy, but it looks kind of painterly to me, so I kind of like that. Oh, it looks like I just looped something funny here with the video clip. But you get to see it again. How about that? But yeah, like those artists I really appreciate. I don't draw like them. And it's funny, I'd love to draw like them, but I just don't. It doesn't come out that way. One day I'll be a lot more comfortable. Oh, I seem to be looping a lot of these clips, but that's okay. I guess because it's going so fast anyway, you guys should be able to see what I'm doing here. This is, so I am doing this water effect that I totally stumbled on like 4 Inktobers ago. When I was drawing, I had to figure out how to draw water. And I looked at a lot of Will Eisner's stuff because he likes to draw rainy scenes, and I love the way that he would do it. How he would depict something as wet with ink. And so I kind of figured out this way that I could do it and have it work with the way that I draw. The way the waves are and all that kind of stuff, it's also from him. Looking at his stuff and looking at some other artists like Kevin Nolan for inking and how to approach certain things when they're when they're wet, right? Like it's like a certain texture that you want to add on in there. John Romita Jr., whose stuff I love, like his early stuff I really loved. Or maybe like his in-between stuff? I don't know how to describe that. It's when he was doing Iron Man. I think he was doing the Armor Wars stuff. I can't remember. That's when I saw Daredevil. And he did like the Typhoid Mary stuff. He would just draw rain, and it was fun. I loved looking at the way he did rain. So I kind of channel some of that when I try to do rain coming off of like a solid object. And then on top of that, when I add a lot of dark black areas with that rain, it makes it a little bit more it makes it work in the way I draw better. Like so I kind of had to figure that out a bit. Now I'm doing these circular arcs around the paneling for this, I guess, larger image that's behind all these panels. And this is, again, trying to reinforce the idea that he's growing, or he's getting bigger, using his Gigantor powers or whatever, what have you. Like Ultraman, when he would get gigantic, because he's gonna fight a giant robot soon. And here the feathering that I'm doing is a lot bigger. So these were kind of fun, more fun than these small ones that you can see to the right of my hand, because these really can get wild. And see the streaks on this white arc that's there? That's part of the stuff I was talking about, where I just start inking, and sometimes the feathering itself will kind of dictate what I should do with a shape. And I want to use them like speed lines, so it's very fun that way. I guess I was I did like a little mark there just in case I would get lost. I've done this before. Well, I'll do like pattern. So say the pattern's like stripes, black, white, black, white, black, white. I have messed up many drawings forgetting the pattern. So then I'll like color in a dark silhouette that was not supposed to be a dark silhouette, and then I will lose the drawing, or I'll lose the pattern, and it just looks bad. I think I've recovered a few of those, or maybe rather I think I did on those spots in the pages or in the drawing that I was doing. And sometimes, yeah, like I said, there, some of these accidents will work out. But it is a little nerve-wracking when it happens, because, you go in there with plan A, and now all of a sudden, oops, I got to rely on plan D because of all the mistakes that I did. And that's part of the fun, too. Like, something else happens. Like, because let me catch my breath here. Let me say, like, when I go into a drawing, say, right, and I have all these influences, and I don't hide it, I have all these influences, all these things I want to do. So I'll be like, ooh, I want to do this angle like George Perez did, or like Jerry Ordway did, or something dynamic like Jack Kirby. And, so I have an idea of what I want to do. But fortunately, and I'll explain why, I don't actually pull it off perfectly. Because I'm not George Perez or Jerry Ordway or Jack Kirby. So whatever they were trying to do, the idea of it, the thought of it, the energy of it, I end up having to figure out how I could do it personally. Because, whatever tools they learn, whatever techniques they have, I don't. And I'm trying to learn it. Sure. And that's part of it too. But since I don't have it yet, whatever they're doing, or because I draw a certain way, it's my own way, you can't really tear that out of you. I have to figure out how to get what I liked from their drawing style into mine. So, I think I may have used that example before, but one of the easier ways to think about it would be, I want the graphic look of Mike Mignola's compositions, right? I love the way his stuff is so graphic, and how he can block out shapes that become almost iconic, right? Like a lightning bolt, or, that kind of stuff. Water, or an effect, right? He starts boiling it down, something simple. And when I try to do it, some of my earlier drawings are like this. It doesn't look right, because I don't draw everything else with that mentality, right? I don't draw everything else with his aesthetic or his theory on why these things are blacked out, why these shapes are here, and so on and so on. What gets simplified, what gets an angle, what gets soft, right? Like, I don't have all that stuff. I just have the idea, like, I want it to be graphic like Mike Mignola. So then my brain has to adjust and go, okay, I can't do Mike Mignola, right? Not a lot of people can. So what is it that I liked about that drawing that I'm trying to get into mine. And the graphic look, the graphic shapes, right? Dark shapes and all that kind of stuff. Yes, I want those. But my artwork doesn't look anything like Mike Mignola. And I think one of the things I've learned or am learning is I like being able to look at other people's artwork and trying to translate it into mine. Mainly because usually it doesn't look anything like what they're doing. Right? And here's the final page. And now I have a few more clips whoops, that was not the final page. It was almost the final page, but I left a little segment of it uninked. It's water. My favorite. But as I was saying, that's part of the fun, is when I'm looking at somebody else's stuff and wanting to put that into mine. But, and before I used to just copy things straight, and that's totally fine. That is how I learned how to draw. I would copy people's stuff. But now, because there's all sorts of influences in my drawing, the way I draw, I feel like I have to figure out how to make it all fit, right? It's all these tools. And sometimes, it won't be after a few years that I'll be like, that doesn't work. So I need to get rid of that. And it's okay. It's okay if your stuff doesn't look great. If my stuff doesn't look great right off the bat, that's part of the fun. I keep saying fun, but it is. It truly is fun. And now, so I'm inking the water. And the idea, my earliest idea of trying to draw something with distance, using certain techniques, was from this comic book I worked on in the Philippines, and it was a scene, a forest scene, and I kind of did a bunch of leaves, trees, and they're all just lines. They're all the same line width throughout the whole thing. So it has a certain look that is kind of cool. But I was into Adam Hughes and the Gaijin Studio people, Brian Stelfreeze. That stuff still makes its way into my stuff, obviously. So I would use a thicker line to show that something was closer. I guess you could think of that like also in animation. Certain animation styles will have a thick outline over characters, and then the background's just completely painted, and so the characters pop. So that same mentality added on to that forest helped me designate space, and it was cool. I kind of stumbled on it. That's the most memorable time I actually figured that out, quote unquote figured that out. I mean, maybe I was doing it already, or I had the idea, but that was the one where I felt like I actually executed it. So I had a bunch of drawings where they would like fat outlines on characters and then a lot of lines in the back, and it was almost like cross hatching. So I'd draw like a character in the foreground, and the background would have buildings, say skyscrapers. But I would draw a lot of lines for windows, like struts, just detail in the back of the building, with the thinking that this is going to do the same as making a gray cross-hatching area in the back. And then the character would be in the front and would have really fat outline on them. Anyway, how did I get to that? It's because the water thing that I'm doing here now, I have a similar thought process. I'm thinking, okay, the darker waves, right, the ones with more lines, will be in the back, and the ones in the front will have, less shadow, less lines, to kind of have that effect. I think it's okay in this page. I think I've done that look better in other pages, but it's the same idea, and it's a good cheat. I guess it's not really a cheat. I like to call it a cheat, to block out your darks, right? But not fully committing to a really dark space. There's still some white area that's showing through. So on his foot here on the right, above in the middle of the waves is the water coming off of his foot, and that one I leave mostly white, and it kind of helps, well, for one, add contrast, but it kind of makes that area a little bit more foggy, misty, just by adding not as many lines. So even here the waves aren't as stacked. I kind of ease up a little bit on how many waves, like the pointy triangles, there are. Or sometimes I don't even draw the edge of the triangle. It's just like a little hatching. And when they're all together, it kind of works. And it's fun. It's my OCD trying to fill in all these waves and stuff. It's fun. It gets to a point where the hatching is, I can almost turn off my mind, right? Like all the shadows are coming on the left side. There's a point to it, and that's it. And then I'll sometimes take a look, stand back a little bit, maybe there when my hands disappeared for a little bit, and try to squint and take a look at where more of these darks could be. So as I'm inking this, I'm also looking at the panel border, which is the circle, and I like kind of, if I can get away with it, to make it completely dark so that panel border really stands out. And then here I'm just finishing it up. And there's the final page. So we get to take a look at the details here and how it ended up. I liked how it turned out. It took a lot of time, but it was fun. And that's it, I think, for this episode. Thank you for joining me, and I'll see you next time.